David, you've been, as a chairman, you've been running a game that is just a game of money, and Sky is exploiting the fan.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think Garth answered the point about Sky, and I haven't really much to add to it, because I think Sky gives, whatever you think about them, they've captured the market. They give a most fantastic value for money proposition, and as indeed do the BBC and the other broadcasters. But we're terribly lucky in this country, the way in which all sports are broadcast and the quality of it. But I wanted to touch, if I may, on the fans' ownership question, because first of all, maybe this is not the case now with one or two clubs being purchased, but the majority of clubs are run by fans. That's the motivation. You try telling, I've been at a 72 Football League Club meeting today in Leicester, you try telling the vast majority of those owners that they're not fans, who have stumped up, hundreds of thousands and millions of pounds to underwrite their clubs. It's kind of crazy. There are some supporters' trusts, which I think are very valuable and deserve lots of support, because in some cases, in the smaller clubs, where the money, the amounts we're talking about are smaller, then the supporter trusts have been invaluable in getting the clubs back up and running. And that's what we're all about, is trying to make sure that our clubs do run and run sensibly. So fan involvement in clubs, absolutely vital for me. You can't possibly, no single club operates without its fans, and I don't believe that there is any divorce or any separation between the two.
Dominic. Yeah, I think answer the first question about racism and pick up a point that Tom made about Tottenham. I mean, my stepfather was a Tottenham fan. He had 2 season tickets. He used to take me a lot. And I remember this hissing song, and it was Garth will know it. Spurs, you're off to Belston again, the Yids are off to Belston, and it's hissing. And I thought it could only be, I mean, where else would that even then have been acceptable? Where else, except in a football ground, would that have been thought possible? And in fact, I went on, looking for this debate and thinking about it, I went on to a website that has football chants, and it's quite a big website, and it has advertisements, obviously has commercial value. And under Leeds United, there is still the Spurs Belston song. It's online, you can see it. So yes, there is that sort of racism in the game, which you do not see anywhere else.
Let's move on to another question. Yes, over there.
Hello, I'm asking a question for someone from our online audience, and that person asks, how would you justify the decision to uphold the result of France's World Cup qualifier against Ireland based on Thierry Henry's handball? And that's for the speakers against the motion.
Okay, thanks very much. We'll get another question over there. Yes, thank you.
When you talk about the beautiful game, are you referring just to the professional side of it? Because I haven't really heard you talk about the amateur side, and to be honest, I scored a beautiful goal on Tuesday.
Excellent, thank you. We'll have one more.
Hello. Another question from our online audience, from a Reddit user called Graham Cotson, who's a Luton fan, to the panel. Can the FA ever really claim to be upholding the integrity of the game by dishing out gigantic point penalties to more lowly clubs, many of whom don't survive the ordeal, while allowing famous clubs such as Man U to build up hundreds of millions of pounds of debt, which they will probably never pay off?
Okay, let's start with something that you may want to defend over this side. Hunter, how could you justify France's goal and Thierry Henry's goal, which took them...
The referee's decision is final. The referee didn't see it. Next question, please. Yeah. The referee cannot give what he doesn't see.
Can I comment on this particular point? To me, this is extremely funny, the Thierry Henry case. Because what happened was, he's a very clever and skillful player, and he knew that he was his hand was on the blind side of the referee. The referee couldn't see it. The Irish players said at the time, oh no, we would have done the same thing. We didn't have a problem with what Thierry Henry did. They were furious with the referee, and yet they practice as professionals, conning the referees the whole time, and then are furious when they succeed. So yes, this was just business as usual. And you know, the referee, of course, as usual, when this happens, you always read in the next day's papers, referee X, quote, has gone into hiding. Only in football, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, this is very unfair, if I may say so, because football somehow on this panel has been treated, or by my opponents, as though it's different than cricket, it's different than rugby. Football hasn't had a betting scandal the likes that cricket have had that's blown the industry apart. Anzi Kronya, do I have to mention a name? Rugby. Football doesn't have the drug problems that rugby have had it late with Bloodgate. So football does exist and does function, and it does have its anomalies, I admit, with the chanting, and it does have its unattractive moments. But to somehow make football different than the other sports would be wholly unreasonable.
Ed.
There's certainly something in what Garth says, and I think it must be very annoying when sports which aren't as successful as football constantly knock it, and there's probably a degree of jealousy in that. I was always against cricket positioning itself so far on the moral high ground that it couldn't see its own problems. But, all that having been said, I think football has become evolved, more sophisticated and more ingrained forms of forms of cheating and some forms of professional exploitation of opportunities. And I wrote in my last book about being at the Emirates when there was a foul, and the guy who was fouled kind of made the most of it to do his professional thing in the way that they do. And then, having got the result and the yellow card and the free kick, he kind of went back and sort of tapped the opposing player, who he'd basically defrauded and cheated, as if to say, all in the game, we all know what's going on here, nothing personal. And it was that kind of thing that I do think sports have a responsibility to try and fight. Now, when I was a cricketer, I was captain at Middlesex, I did try to oppose premeditated cheating. There are certainly times I lost my temper. There are certainly times I did things I'm not proud of, I'm ashamed of. No angel at all. But I am against premeditated cheating. And I think that some sports have gone further down that line than others. It's been very interesting to watch in rugby union the shift in the last few years. And what people don't understand, I think this is an important thing about beauty and about cheating, is that it may not seem a very big deal let's move it to a different sport for 1 second, for an open side flank in rugby to be offside all game. But it stops the opposition from playing rugby you want to watch. So a little bit of cheating, taken to its logical extreme, damages the whole game. And I think there will come a point, and this is my whole argument about morality in sport, there will come a point when there's just too much. And I think that's where Tom's analogy with finance is very apt, is that it's not a question of we've got to get rid of the banks, or we can't touch the banks because they give us so much money in tax yields and pay for the restaurants and push our housing prices up. We've got to look at the optimal way to get the best out of something. And that means we do have to be very vigilant. And I think the issue of morality and debt and institutionalized complacency is a problem that we should all be very careful about.